But let's get into some of this royal detail, because someone who has observed the royal family for decades is the BBC's royal correspondent Jennie Bond, who was there from '89 to 2003. If you know your royal history, that's a tumultuous time. Jennie, great to have you on the program.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
We are seeing history. I know it's a sorrowful time for many who admire the Queen, but it's also now moving into that phase where there's a sombre but wonderful commemoration of an extraordinary life.
Yeah, there have been so many wonderful tributes, haven't there? And I've reported on the royals now for 30 years. I've travelled the world with the Queen. I've been to Australia with the Queen. And it's a great sadness for me to stand here where I've reported so often and look at that building and think that she's not there any longer. But the tributes, I think, have been most heartfelt from her children and grandchildren. Do you know the one that came through yesterday? Beatrice and Eugenie, the young York girls, said what an honour and privilege it had been to be the Queen's granddaughters. And I loved the phrase they said. She was many things, but she was our loving hand on our backs, leading us through this world. And I think that's really what a lot of the people who are queuing for hours to pay their respects to her also felt.
We're just looking here at when all of the grandchildren were together, and the age span is incredible. Literally from a 14-year-old boy all the way through to William. This is
to Pete Phillips.
Peter Phillips. My apologies. A big span of people, and the idea, and anyone who's obviously had kids or grandkids, nieces and nephews, when you're just in that constant state of care over many decades, it actually helps centre you, it helps change you, doesn't it?
It does, and I think that we've heard from them how important she was in their lives in so many ways, but the little details like picking heather, picking raspberries, we suddenly see, you know, she wasn't just a queen, she was a really dedicated grandmother particularly. She was very caught up with her royal duties for her own children, but with the grandchildren she had time.
Well, we saw yesterday, late afternoon, the now King and the Prince of Wales, Prince William, they went out to the crowds. They not just thanked those standing to pay tribute, but they also wanted to thank all the associated entourage, you know, the emergency services people, the equivalent of Australia's St John ambulance, people helping out, just marshalling crowds. It's a mammoth operation, isn't it, Jennie?
It is, and I do feel for Charles. Again, a man I've known a little bit over the years, and this has been a brutal schedule. I mean, I've known about the arrangements for the Queen's funeral for decades, but what I didn't realise is what a burden it would be for the new monarch to do all he's had to do, unify this country, go to all provinces and countries, and to go and meet the people, as you say, to say thank you, being visible. His mother knew this. Being visible is really important.
In the early days, it felt like there was a rather palpable concern from the people behind all of these plans about the obvious comparisons to the Queen Mother's and to Diana's death, particularly the flowers that they didn't want. It was fairly obvious they didn't want a comparison of how many flowers 25 years ago versus how many flowers now. So they developed this beautiful idea that at the end of each day, flowers would be taken from the front of the palace, put into the park, and that has become its own thing. So how does this compare to the events of what feels like yesterday, but now is a little while ago?
Well, yes, you're right. The flowers for Diana were just stupendous, and they began to stink, quite honestly, after a while, because they were just laying there and rotting. So this is a very good plan. I think this is more. It's turning into a celebration, I suppose, of a very old lady's life, whereas with Diana, it was just pure shock throughout the mourning period.
Yeah, you get that sense too, don't you, Peter, over this, that despite the fact that everyone's had well-laid plans and well-known realities that are coming for a long period of time, we've gone through the shock of last week, and now we're going through the celebration. And as I always say to everyone watching, and we really do appreciate how everyone has been sticking with us, she deserves it. She deserves all of these days, all of this focus and all the rest of it. Thank you very much. Really do appreciate it.